So I sit down, and I'm in the police precinct, and I'm given a number, number 2. And all the other police officers hold numbers. So I'm holding a number, and they're joking and kidding around with each other, elbowing each other. And I say, something is terribly wrong here. This is not going right. I feel like I have a bullseye on me. There's something that feels like when you have a great sense of embarrassment and your face grows red. You feel it when you've been embarrassed, when you feel shamed. Except, I'm just hurt. I'm hurt because I'm telling the truth and everything is going from bad to worse. I insist on my innocence, and I call my mother, who arrives at the police precinct. And she comes to the cell bars where I'm at. And she comes, and I hear her cries as if a piccolo, her shrill cry. And then she comes to the door. She stands 5 feet tall, and she holds the bars, and she says, mi hijo, they're charging you with murder. And I say, I know, but I didn't do it, Mom. I didn't do it. And I look at her hands, her bare fingernails, her little ring, silver, cheap. Her hands that look like a man and yet are that of a woman. Her hands that give more than they take. Her tears in her eyes reflecting the pain of her first son out of my 3 other brothers and sister who's 6 years old being taken away at this very moment, not knowing what's going to happen. Yet we're all confident eventually that the truth will prevail, despite the fact that after the prosecutor secures, and forgive me if I don't pronounce it right, an umklaga, an indictment against me, right? And my Dasverbrechen begins in terms of long-term detention after I am formally charged with murder. This after I tell a judge, I am innocent. I didn't kill Raymond Blount. And so I'm sent to Rikers Island because now I have to wait for my trial. I have to wait with the idea, with the hopes that patience and the truth would equal freedom. Sounds like simple arithmetic in my mind, but it's about to become a very complicated legal calculus to which I find no equation, ladies and gentlemen. Rikers Island is a horrible detention center, maximum security prison, where there's 14,000 inmates. 14,000. And it's like a gulag archipelago, not in Russia, but in New York City, in which the different prisons are separated. And there's thousands of prisoners in each one. And the men there are going crazy. They're fighting, they're stabbing, they're killing each other. In fact, there's a New York Times article that reports that just the year before, there was 2,500 violent incidents with inmates and inmates fighting each other, with inmates fighting correctional officers. While there, I'm physically attacked. I arrive with shackles, and I'm stripped of all my clothing, and I'm forced to see a bullpen of men sitting down, standing, and I have to strip in front of them in order for the correctional officers to look if I am hiding something on me. And then I hear, and I look around and I'm saying, oh, I'm not going to like this place. Something's going to happen here. And as I've said, it's true, because I'm physically attacked there, just because I want to call my mother, just because I want to call my lawyer. I can't even use the phone because there is a monopoly, meaning that inmates are trying to control the phone because they use it for black market contraband operations, to run drugs in prison, to connect with gangs and do what they have to do outside to carry orders. So the phone is like gold in there. and it's highly coveted. And yet, I endure all of that. I endure the idea that I'm being subjected to this, but that I'm going to go home. I feel it. That's why I go to trial. I go to trial because I'm an American citizen who has the right to a trial. I have a right to a grand jury. I know that Germany does not have a grand jury, but we do. And yet, I'm denied a right to a grand jury. I'm not even told about that. Meaning that before my trial, or I should say, before the indictment was issued, citizens are able to hear the case from some witnesses and so forth before they issue the indictment or umklaga, and I don't get that right. But I demand my right to go to trial because I'm not going to plead to something I didn't do. And so I go to trial. And I take the stand. And I swear on the Bible to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. My friends come forward and also do the same thing. And yet, it doesn't seem to matter, because against my truth are lies, police misconduct, and prosecutorial ethical violations of human rights that I don't know are happening, but are indeed happening. By all accounts, according to the judge's eventual decision, 2 witnesses are offered an opportunity to get their own unrelated charges, not anything related to this criminal case, but to other problems that they have because they have been arrested before, if they falsely testify against me. They tell the prosecutor and the police officer they weren't sure of me being the perpetrator because I was a big guy. That's one of the reasons. But they received certain instructions which helped convince them, which is also illegal. By all accounts, the witnesses, by their own admissions eventually, say that in the lineup, the police officers tell them, tell us who you think is responsible. That is a very suggestive comment to make to a witness, because it means that in that lineup procedure, somebody is responsible. So it's 1 out of 6, which kind of puts you in the position to pick somebody. But also because they had those deals and the prosecutor told them, if you cooperate with us, you're going to get that charge dismissed. And so that is exactly what happens. The witnesses get their charges dismissed right before my trial begins. And I don't know this. Moreover, Ephraim Lopez, who had been in custody as a 16-year-old child, really, a juvenile, which under German law, juveniles are not charged as adults. He is, under American law, vulnerable to be charged as an adult, with murder in this case, as an accessory, because he knew everything about what happened. And he escapes punishment because even though he told the police and prosecutor about the perpetrator and where he lived, that he was a drug dealer from his neighborhood, and that his physical description that he didn't even match me, he gets an opportunity to get out because now he decides to say that I'm Wulu, so that he can escape the charges and not face accessory to murder charges. And so he gets out of his problem and now has to testify against me. So I'm at trial and I'm sitting down in the defense table and he's lying. He's saying I'm Wulu. And he's saying that he knows me from his neighborhood. And I'm saying, wow, this is insane. And he's like a Pinocchio. His nose is growing in my trial, and it's almost like I could tickle it from my defense table. You know? That's how much he's lying. As the trial progresses, he's just lying, and that nose is growing and growing and growing. And so are my problems. Because it doesn't matter that there were inconsistencies. Thus, found guilty. I'm found guilty, and when the jury comes back that we, the people of the state of New York versus Fernando Bermudez, find the defendant guilty of murder, I couldn't believe it. I heard my mother crying, my little sister was crying, my grandmother was crying, my whole family was crying. And I felt like my whole body was just traveling outside as I stood down. I just couldn't believe it. And my father rose in the courtroom and told the prosecutor, "You're the only criminal in this courtroom, and the truth will prevail." After which, the prosecutor exaggerates his fear for his safety by saying he needs bodyguards from that point on. Just because my parents, my loved ones, loved me. As a result of being found guilty, now I'm sent to upstate prisons. I'm sentenced to 23 years to life with a resounding pound of the gavel. Bang, 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 bang! And that sound of the judge hitting that bench and saying that I have a life sentence echoes in my head as now I find myself going upstate on a big bus with correctional officers with shotguns in the back. When I get there, I'm stripped of my clothing. Once again, my head is shaven, and I'm placed in a large room with showers, except there's no hot water. It's freezing cold, and I work furiously, jumping up and down, because I'm freezing, trying to get this lice spray against the idea if in case I have any bugs on me, it could be removed before I enter the New York State prison system. And I'm given numbers, 92, 83, 25, which becomes my numbers for the next 17 years after being at Rikers Island for over a year and a half. And now, it feels like my identity is leaving me. This number is the number that's called to me everywhere I go. 92, 83, 25, report to the mess hall. 92, 83, 25, you have a visit. 93, 83, 25, pack up your bags, you're going upstate. I'm told where to go, who to see, what to eat, and if I'm not careful, how to think. And that's because in upstate prisons, there's a saying that go with the flow, or to put it differently, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. All around me, there's madness. Once again, gangs are fighting. People are stabbing each other. I'm seeing people with cut marks this big and it's just splattering blood, and they're being rushed to an emergency treatment center. Somebody kills themselves. And I'm thinking about doing the same thing. Because a life sentence, 23 years to life, seems like a marathon that I can't finish. Because a life sentence, let me assure you, does not pass by like a sneeze. It's no sprint. And already I'm running out of breath. But instead of giving up, I decide to use the power of education as a catalyst to purge my emotions, to exercise my faith, and to continue my plans that I had to go to college while being a free man. I began educating myself, and I began reading books. I began learning the law, that complicated law that combines the law of Latin language in American law. And I started trying to investigate. This is because after my trial, now we understand some of the evidence that was hid from us. German law does not give prosecutors the same discretion it does in American law, fortunately. Meaning that prosecutors have much more discretion. German courts, which are ruled by a judge, and in more serious cases by several judges and some laypersons, does not have that same protection as American law does. I should say, it makes it more dangerous under American law that the prosecutor has discretion. In this case, as you've seen, he was able to dismiss the charges against Efraim Lopez and give him a deal. He was able to secure against 2 witnesses their charges being dropped in order to testify against him. Worse, at the eve of my trial, when my trial had begun, he brought in boxes of evidence, rolled them in actually, and dropped them on the table. Right when I'm about to begin my trial. In American law, it's called discovery. And discovery means that the defense should have a chance to inspect the evidence that a prosecutor has in order to create a defense. But the prosecutor, in my case, because he has discretion and is not as prevented the way German law would fortunately do, this proves a disadvantage. And that evidence, now we have an ability to inspect after my trial. So we begin an investigation. And my parents are investigating on their own. They're trying to do what they can to find the truth. With a former homicide detective who now takes my case and starts working for free because he believes in my innocence. And so I have to put aside thoughts